Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're doing well. We're continuing our Wayside School series. Wayside School is falling down. This is Chapter 8, The Best Part. Todd brought a toy to school. It was a cute, adorable puppy dog. Everyone who saw it said, "Aw." "Aw," said Jenny. "He has such a sweet face." "Aw," said Stephen. "Look at her darling eyes." "Aw," said Dee Dee. "Isn't he the cutest puppy you've ever seen?" "Aw," said Calvin. "Isn't she adorable?" Well, Joy sat at the desk behind Todd. Big deal, she thought. It was just a hunk of plastic that happens to look like a dog. But even though Joy didn't like Todd's toy, she decided to take it. "Wait," said Todd. "Let me show you the best part," he told the class. Before he could show them the best part, Mrs. Jules rang her cowbell. "Take your seats," she commanded. The bell has rung. All the children returned to their desk. "Todd, go write your name on the blackboard." Todd was the only one who had been in his seat, yet he was always the one who got into trouble. That was typical. Mrs. Jules had a system. The first time someone got into trouble, he had to write his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. The second time he got into trouble, he had to put a check next to his name. And if he got into trouble a third time, he had to circle his name and then go home early at 12 o'clock on the kindergarten bus. Todd went home on the kindergarten bus every day. Some of the other kids thought he was lucky, but he wished just once he could make it to past 12 o'clock without getting into trouble 3 times. He walked to the front of the room and wrote his name on the blackboard under the word discipline. While Todd was at the board, Joy reached over her desk and into Todd's. She felt around for the toy, but as she tried to lift it out, it caught onto something and then dropped to the floor. Todd returned to his seat. "Todd, is that toy on the floor? Is that your toy on the floor?" asked Mrs. Jules. "How'd it get there?" asked Todd. "You know the rules, Todd," said Mrs. Jules. "Toys must be kept inside your desk, or else I'm going to take them. Now bring it here." Todd gave the toy to Mrs. Jules. "Oh, how precious," said Mrs. Jules. "He's the most lovable puppy I've ever seen." She kissed Todd's plastic puppy on its plastic nose. "I guess I can let you off this time. But try to keep him in your desk." She kissed Todd's toy again and then handed it back to him. "You can erase your name from the board too." Well, Todd could hardly believe it. For the first time ever, he erased his name from the board. As he headed back to his seat, Mrs. Jewell said, "Here, take a Tootsie Roll Pop for that sweet puppy." Todd was amazed. So was Joy. Now more than ever, she wanted that toy. Out at recess, everyone wanted to see Todd's toy. "It's magic," said BB. "It kept you from getting into trouble." "No, Mrs. Jules is just a nice teacher," said Todd. "Here, let me show you the best part about this dog." He grabbed hold of the dog's tail and turned it like a crank. Suddenly, the cute, floppy ears stood straight up. The mouth opened wide, and the teeth grew into sharp fangs. "Wow," said Dee Dee. Todd wasn't finished. He pulled the dog's nose and stretched it out of its face. The cheeks became thin and bony. The eyes were no longer sweet, but grim and frightening. "What a cool toy! What a great toy," said Calvin. The cute little puppy had turned into a little man-eating angry wolf. "I still haven't shown you the best part of this toy," said Todd. But before he could show him the best part, the bell rang, and everyone ran back up the stairs to their class. "I've got to get that puppy," thought Joy, as she stared at the back of Todd's desk. "Then I'll never get into trouble again." She didn't know Todd's toy had changed into a man-eating wolf. Her lunchbox was on her lap. She quietly opened it and took out a carton of cranberry juice in a tiny straw. She stuck the straw into the carton and sucked some juice into it. She waited for Mrs. Jules to turn around. Then she blew the juice out of the straw, and it splattered against Todd's neck. He slapped the back of his neck with his hand. Joy started to laugh to herself. She sucked up some more juice, took careful aim, and fired. Todd turned around, but Joy already had the straw out of her mouth and was looking down at her book. Todd rubbed the back of his neck and face front. Joy sucked up more juice and blew it onto Todd's neck. "Hey!" he shouted, turning around. "Leave me alone, Todd. I'm just trying to do my work," said Joy. "Todd, what's the matter with you?" asked Mrs. Jules. "I try to be nice, but you just don't take advantage. Now go write your name on the blackboard." Todd walked up to the front of the room. He still thought Mrs. Jules was the nicest teacher in the world. He looked up at the clock, and it was almost 11. I just might make it today, he thought. I just might make it. He started to write his name when he heard a loud scream. He turned around and saw Joy jumping up and down, waving her hand in the air. His toy was biting her pinky finger, and she couldn't shake it off. "Help!" screamed Joy as she hopped around the room. "Todd, how do I get this off, Todd, please?" Todd looked at Joy, smiled. "There," he said to the class, "that's the best part of the toy." Chapter 9. Mush. Warning: do not read this story after eating. In fact, don't read it before eating either. In fact, just to be safe, don't read this story if you're ever planning on eating again. Miss Mush wiped her hands on her apron. She smiled at the children, who were all lined up in the cafeteria. It warmed her heart to see how much they liked her food. Gotta turn the page, just a second. Marisha was first in line. "And what would you like today, Marisha?" said Miss Mush. She knew the name of every child in Wayside School. Marisha looked at the sign in the cafeteria. "Just milk," said Marisha. "I brought my lunch." Miss Mush smiled and gave Marisha a carton of milk. Joy was next in line. "And what would you like, Joy?" asked Miss Mush. "Milk," said Joy. Miss Mush smiled and gave Joy a carton of milk. "Milk, please," said Jason. "Just milk," said Damon. "Milk," said DJ. "Milk," said Leslie. It was almost Ron's turn. He hadn't brought a lunch. He normally brought a peanut butter jelly sandwich to school, but there hadn't been a single slice of bread in his house that morning. "I know," his mother said. "I'll give you some money, and you can buy a nice hot lunch from Miss Mush." She thought it was a brilliant idea. Ron had other ideas. "Can't I just have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich without the bread?" Now he looked at the sign. Mushroom surprise. He wished he weren't so hungry. This was the 18th day in a row that the special was mushroom surprise. It was called mushroom surprise because it could have been a surprise if anybody ever ordered it. No one ever did except Louis, of course. That's why it had been there for 18 straight days. There was always plenty of leftovers. "Milk," said Terrence. "Milk," said Sherry. "Milk," said Calvin. "Milk, please," said BB. "And what would you like today, Ron?" asked Miss Mush. Ron took a deep breath. "I'll have the mushroom surprise." Tears of joy filled Mrs. Mush's eyes. She blew her nose on her apron and then said, "One mushroom surprise coming right up." Tears came to Ron's eyes too, but for a different reason. He looked at the mushroom surprise, and it was sort of green. So was Ron's face. Miss Mush proudly dumped a hot lump of mushroom surprise on a paper plate and handed it to Ron. He put it on his tray, then pushed it over to the cash register, where he had paid for it. The news quickly spread around the cafeteria, then up and down the stairs and out into the playground. "Ron ordered the mushroom surprise! Ron ordered the mushroom surprise!" Mrs. Jules was sitting in the teacher's lounge on the 12th floor when BB burst into the room. All the teachers were shocked to see her. "BB, you're not allowed in here," said Mrs. Jules. "This is a secret place." "Ron ordered the mushroom surprise!" BB shouted. Then she ran back up to the cafeteria. As Ron sat down at the table, 87 children crowded around him to watch him eat. "I wonder what the surprise is," asked Dee Dee. She had the best view. She was pushed right up alongside Ron's chair. "Maybe it tastes good," said Leslie. "Maybe that's the surprise." "No, I think it's called mushroom surprise because after you eat it, I'm going to be very surprised if you don't get sick," said Mac. "Well, Louis eats it, and he doesn't get sick," said Jason. "Louis has been eating Mrs. Mush's food for so long, he's immune to it," said Allison. Ron dug his plastic fork into the goop. He raised it to his mouth. Dana covered her eyes. "I can't watch," she exclaimed. Ron opened his mouth wide. The fork entered. He brought the fork out again. It was empty. Ron chewed twice, then swallowed. "He ate it!" Dee Dee announced for those who couldn't see him. Stephen screamed. Said Ron. "Not too bad. It sort of tastes like a mixture of bananas and spinach." "What's the surprise?" asked Dee Dee. Ron looked at Dee Dee. His face began to get flushed. His eyes changed color. His whole body began to shake, like a washing machine on the spin cycle. Dee Dee was afraid he was going to throw up. She tried to get away, but everyone crowded around her. There was no room for her to move. But Ron didn't throw up. He stood up, He put his arm around Dee Dee's neck and he kissed her smack on the lips. He sat back down. His eyes returned to their normal color. "Ugh!" said Dee Dee, wiping her mouth on her sleeve. "What's the matter?" asked Ron. "Don't you know what you just did?" asked Allison. "I just ate some mushroom surprise. It wasn't bad. It was sort of like a mixture of hot dog and grape jelly. I wonder what the surprise is." He dug his plastic fork back into the goop. All the children ran away. When Mrs. Jules entered the cafeteria, no one was there except for Ron. He was sitting alone at the table eating mushroom surprise. Mrs. Jules sat next to him. "Hi, Ron. So how does it taste? And what's the surprise?" Ron swallowed another mouthful. He looked at his teacher. His face flushed and his eyes changed colors. And then... Tomorrow, Chapter 10, Music. Have a great day.